All right, my name is Liz, and I'm with Big Hairy Dog. I'm sorry if you guys heard that automated voice for the go-to meeting. But today we are going to be taking a look at Retail Pro V9 physical inventory. And there's a few documents I'm going to be using. And so, really just the one, but we have a few versions of this document. So we do have a physical inventory Retail Pro V9 manual. And this is going to be our guideline for today. And this is going to be for use with PT scanners, tried and true workhorse scanners. Great, and we do have a few available for renting as well. There are also our Janum scanners, Foundry Logic, Dolphin scanners. So the type of scanner that you use to go ahead and get your scans into Retail Pro might vary, but the basic steps are all going to be the same, and we're going to go ahead and walk through that today. Again, my name is Liz with Big Hairy Dog. We're actually going to give it just a few minutes because I do see that there's still some people pouring in here. So give me just a moment here. Thank you. All right, then. I think that's been a slight slowdown of people trying to get in. So again, my name is Liz with Big Hairy Dog, and today we're going to be going over physical inventory for Retail Pro version 9. And before we get started here, there is a little prep work that we always like to go ahead and do. And so, of course, before you run a physical, it is always good to go ahead and do a backup of your system. Remember that backups can only be done on the server or on the main of that remote store. And everyone will go ahead and either needs to be out of Retail Pro or they will be disconnected from the database if they are in Retail Pro. But backing up is a solid first step. If there's a mistake, we always can go ahead and go back. And then, of course, running an on-hand report. So that is more of a suggestion. If you'd like to, remember that you can always run your discrepancy reports directly from within Retail Pro and from within reporting as well. So today, also for our webinar, please remember that for right now, everyone did come in muted. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to go ahead and either type them out directly and ask, or raise your hand and I can go ahead and unmute you if you have a mic. I'll keep an eye out on my questions and the hand raises, but if I do happen to miss you, I apologize. We will have a time at the end for some question and answers. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. So like I said, backups. And I will also take this moment to go ahead and say, if you are not sure where you are backing up to or how you are running your secondary backup, please go ahead and give us a call. We are more than happy to go ahead and walk you through where you can find your backups and how to pull those secondary backups. Remember that we do require that people have a two-tiered backup structure, which means Retail Pro takes care of the first level of backing up for us. And it's up to us whether we do something like an external hard drive and back it up ourselves, or we set up some kind of cloud-based backup system so we can go ahead and take our secondary copies of your database. All right. And next on our prepping for PI is, of course, testing a download. So a lot of the times, unfortunately, we don't use these scanners all the time. The only time they get pulled out of their box is when we have to actually perform a PI. We always suggest to plug them in, charge them the day before, and make sure that we can go ahead and upload a section of, or at least a few scans, and make sure that the scans are accurate and we're we're looking at essentially the right information. Now, if you decide to rent scanners with Big Hairy Dog, we normally set you up with also a 2-hour training appointment and setup. So a technician gets a chance to go ahead and call you, make sure everything's working appropriately, and make sure that you remember how to go ahead and use the system. That can occasionally be waived if you've been renting scanners with us for a very, very long time and you don't have the need for the training. You kind of have a nice handle on it. But the setup appointment, I would always suggest, we really do want to make sure that everything is working appropriately. And again, those are rented scanners, so it might not be something, that you did or anything like that. But we do test the scanners before they go out. Of course, we just want to make sure that everything is ready to go for when you actually have to do your PI. Now, our zone map. For that, I'm going to go and pop over to our PDF here. Oh, yes. And so we have a quick question. So if we have time during the presentation, to please go over how to input manual inventory counts. And absolutely, I actually, unfortunately, I don't have a physical scanner attached to this machine. So I will show you guys how to go ahead and import all of this manually. And I will also go ahead and show you how we can do it via an import map. I will try my best to go ahead and bridge the gap between the scanners. But I'm going to go ahead and be relying pretty heavily on the PDF document for those scanner screens, okay? But thank you so much. Yeah, of course, thanks, Tim. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about preparing your zones. So whether you have a huge store, a multi-store environment, or it's a smaller mom and pop single store, we always are going to recommend that you break your store into zones. And we always do that. So that way, if you're scanning with a scanner and you come across what we refer to as a bad scan, we scan a barcode that does not exist in Retail Pro. With a zone, we're going to be able to isolate where that bad scan came from, see what product you scanned right before and what product you scanned right after. And we're going to be able to go ahead and find that error a lot easier than if it was just your entire inventory and we kind of didn't know where to look. And so over here, we can see a pretty standard breakdown of Riley's Fly Shop. So those zones are color coordinated. And this is a really solid map. It's really digestible sections. We can go ahead and scan a nice amount of items without getting too overwhelmed. There are certain scanners that do also have scan limitations to keep in mind. Usually nothing, too insane for those scanner limitations, but they do have limitations. And it also makes it so, again, if anything happens with the scanner, and if we lose an entire zone, I am much more comfortable with losing an aisle than losing half of my store. All right. And the zones can be broken up however you see fit. Some people do them by departments. Some people do them based out of the store physical layout. And I would just suggest perhaps colored sticky notes or even colored tape on the floor, just to really make sure that people aren't accidentally going into other people's zones. That's the best way to avoid double counting the same item. All right. And really quick, I'm going to go ahead and pop into my V9 here to move around our GoToMeeting guide here. So under System Preferences, Local Preferences, Merchandise, PI Tool. This is where you're going to be able to see all of your PI settings. So if this is the first time you're running a PI, or if this is the first time you personally are in charge of the PI, I would say definitely take a second, jump into your System Preferences, Local Preferences, Merchandise, PI Tool, and let's see how we're set up. Like I said, I do recommend using zones. Simple physical, like I said, sounds enticing, but putting all of your scans into one giant pool and then trying to find a single scan within that pool is extremely difficult. Finding a single scan within a few smaller buckets is much more manageable. You can also set up where you're initializing how you're initializing your inventory, whether that be item number, which is going to be something more of our V8 clients remember. ALU, or the local UPC. We can also set up, this is something that I enjoy using, my use filter for start. Now, using filter for start, we're going to see exactly what this does, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Essentially, it allows you to filter your inventory before we start the PI, which means we can use this for cycle counts as well. So if you just wanted to count a single department and kind of get that all squared away, we can do that. I want to make sure things like strip my leading zeros for my ALU import during the PT downloads is not checked. If I do have leading zeros, I do want to leave them there. Trim leading blank spaces is usually one that we check off. And again, if yours look a little bit different, you know, that's not the end of the world. There might be reasons why yours look a little bit different. So you can always feel free to go ahead and check in with us and get that, you know, little training appointment before your PI, just to make sure that everything is all set to go. Now, I'm going to come down here to my import map for just a minute. So the import map, remember, there's a few ways that we can get scans within retail or into Retail Pro. We can use a scanner. We can manually input them. We can also use an import map. And so here, import maps is essentially me telling the system how to read these CSV or Excel files. So that was a little bit of a hurry. I forgot that final T there. But this is essentially saying, in this file, we're going to start at our space character 0 and go all the way to the 7th area. So this is for a length of 8 digits. That's going to be my item number, local UPC, or ALU, depending on how I'm set up. And then next is the count. Zone names are not required. Sublocations, serial numbers, if you don't use those items, then they're also not required. Essentially, this is just me telling the system, I'm going to give you a file. The file first 8 characters is how you identify the item. The next 3 characters is the count for that item. And that is just about it. Final thing I have to remember is coming over here to the end and, you know, letting it know really which one am I using. Am I using the ALU, UPC, item number? And again, that's going to be for import maps. And we can build multiple import maps. We can build import maps for specific vendors or anything like that. We can have as many as we need. I'm going to come down to Smart Scan for a moment. So like I said, I'm going to be working with my PT manual, but we do have other scanners. Basic difference between a smart scanner and what we lovingly refer to as a dummy scanner is going to be a smart scanner does have the ability to house your inventory directly in the scanner. So at time of scanning, as I go ahead and, you know, scan the barcode right there in my aisle, it will tell me if this item does not exist in my PI inventory. So with a smart scanner, we are never going to have bad scans in Retail Pro unless we say, put it in anyway. Then we're going to have a bad scan. With a dummy scanner, all that is doing is recording the barcode that you scan and the quantity that you scan. It has no way of confirming that that barcode exists in Retail Pro, and that's where we end up with bad scans. Like I said, bad scans are not the end of the world. We just have to know how to deal with them. All right. Looks like we have another quick question. Oh, yes, and we do also sell those smart scanners. As for cost, unfortunately, I would have to go ahead and get you over to a sales rep, but more than happy to go ahead and take your name down and let them know that you're interested. They're a little busy right now, so they're not going to hound you, but they will get you that quote. All right. So really quick, I'm going to go ahead and just hit update, and we're going to take a moment to come back over here. All right. And so our zones are set up. We've checked our preferences, and we're all set up the way that we want to be or need to be for our PI. Step number 2 is going to be to test these scanners. So like I said, this is going to be something that the technician can either assist you with, Or if you have a scanner and you just kind of want to make sure that you're set up correctly, feel free to go ahead and ask us for our manuals. We can go ahead and show you, but essentially you're going to go into workstation preferences to make sure that this particular scanner is set up. And like I said, this is something that a technician can assist you with, checking COM ports, testing it afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and kind of bypass over here to phase 2. So phase 2 is actually starting the PI. We've done our due diligence in separating our store into zones. And so I'm going to hop into my inventory. And from there, I'm going to jump into physical inventory. If you don't have the button on the screen, no worries. You're going to right click, menu designer, and you're going to add that physical inventory button to the screen. My right side is a little busy, but you guys can always go ahead and do that. You just need to make sure that we are signing in as a user who has permission to add buttons to your menu. And of course, permissions to run the physical inventory tool. Any of your admins are going to work for that. Okay, perfect. And Victoria, I just got your request as well. I'll go ahead and get your name down. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into my physical inventory and pop into stores. So I have a little bit of cleanup to do here, so pardon me. I'm going to go ahead and activate this. There we go. So this is going to be more like what you guys see when you're starting a brand new physical. It's all blank, and if I hop out here and go to physical inventory, now I don't have access to those zones. Before I can build my zones, I have to make a quick stop at my store and tell the system what store this PI is for. Even if you're a single store, you're going to have to go ahead and do this step as well. So PI name, let's go ahead and just say training. That works for me. Then we're going to go ahead and select our store. Usually even multi-store environments are going to usually shift that over to the store, but it is possible to go ahead and run all the store's PIs from one location. You know, it gets a little bit more messy with the numbers, but we have to be a little more careful, but still possible. Go ahead and say create. And here's that filter at the start. So this is where I can go ahead and enter in specific DCS codes or vendor codes if I wanted to do something more closer to a cycle count instead of a complete PI. And the other thing, I'll take a second. Remember, if you don't have access to the filters that you need here, we can right-click, filter design, and bring up those filters above the line so that you can go ahead and use them. And then make sure that you right-click to get back into criteria so that we can fill those filters out. If you just hit OK, it's going to run it with that blank filter, which is actually what I'm going to do for right now because this is a complete physical for me. All right, so there you go. It takes just a moment, but Retail Pro takes a snapshot of everything that's in inventory. And if we hop into PI inventory, you can see that here. Currently, my scan quantity for everything is 0 because we haven't started. My start quantity is what Retail Pro thinks my current on hand is. And so this is another reason why we do recommend that you close the store or we run our PI outside of business hours. It is possible to run a PI while you're still open, but we have to be a lot more careful. Make sure that we're scanning the items before we sell them. Just so that way we don't accidentally mess up our quantities and go into the negative here when we update our PI. All right, or really have more discrepancies than is factual. If it says here that I have 11, I sell one before I get to count it, and I'm telling the system actually we have 10, and it's a discrepancy that didn't need to exist. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pop out using that Retail Pro button back to my store. And now we're going to go ahead and do that also important step of breaking that down into zones. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my PI zones. Here we go. And we're going to be jumping through screens a lot. What helps me, especially when I first started trying to go ahead and wrap my head around this physical inventory, is really taking note of where you are. So currently we are physical store in zone here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit new. We're going to go ahead and select the store. We always have to select the store and the name. So whatever naming convention you decide to use, I'm going to be pretty uncreative here, and we're just going to call this Zone A. Notes are not required. And there we go. And now you can absolutely build a zone, send someone off to that zone, and then come back and finish that uploading those scans. Probably more likely than not, you're going to go ahead and build multiple zones and maybe hopefully have some help. So there you go, Zone B. And I'm also going to go ahead and create a quick Zone C. And I'm going to create this now. Usually, if you're going to create a zone for corrections, it's done a little bit later. But I'm just going to call this one corrections. All right. And there we go. So now that we have our zones created, I'm going to go ahead and hop into my Zone A here. I'm going to use the scanned button and hop into Zone A. So now we're physical stores, zones, Zone A, and then this is still sublocation 1 or subsidiary 1, store 1. That's my Milton store in my setup. All right. So this is where we're going to see our list of scans. If we have any entered so far, this is also where we're going to add our scans. And so you can either hit the new or the add count. These buttons have the same functionality here. I'm just going to hit add count. All right. And like I said, I'm going to have to show you guys the manual way. Here under manual, we have our lookup. Just like the lookup field in your inventory or the lookup field on your receipt, we're going to be able to go ahead and scan directly into this field. And let me go ahead and see. Yeah, okay. Guess if that was a number in my inventory, and it was. So as soon as I put that in, as if I had scanned it, right now this little box here says after the item entry, go to the next item. So it's kind of working. It's kind of working as that dummy scanner where it allows you just to scan it next, scan it next, scan it next. We also have some scanners that have a little bit higher functionality that will allow you to also enter a quantity. Like the PT scanners will do that as well. So you don't necessarily have to go one by one. If you have a case of something especially, just scan the one and then drop down to the quantity field and enter the quantity. Let's actually go ahead and get a new item on here. There we go. I'll just say 10 there and enter. All right. And so really, I think it's important for everybody to learn how to run this manually, because as we're sending people off to scan zones, if we're set up at the front desk or the reception area, the point of sale, I can be scanning all of those smaller items that are near the front. I can be my own zone entirely, and I can just use even just the scanner that's attached to the workstation to go ahead and set this up. Just a moment, looks like we have a quick question. Yes, so the physical start is done at the store and not at the main. Usually, yes. We go ahead and have the stores take charge of their own PI, and then they can go ahead and start the PI on their side. That way they can go ahead and have the freshest and most up-to-date quantities. And thank you for reminding me. When you're in a multi-store environment, there are a few extra things that we want to go ahead and check before we start the physical. We want to make sure that we've polled and that we've run our backup. We talked about backup, but polling is a big thing. So we want to make sure that we send all of our receipts over to the main. We've updated any quantity changes from the main, and then we do our physical. So we want to make sure that we poll before we start our physical. All right. And like I said, there are options. There are some people who like to go ahead and run the PI from the main, but with the inventory at the remote, unless they're going to go ahead and send you an import map that we're going to go ahead and do at the main, that's really the few times that I might say you can do it at the main, if they're going to go ahead and fill out a big import map for you and then send it back. Speaking of import maps, I'm going to go ahead and close this. not cancel. If you hit cancel, you're going to lose the scans that you've entered. Same with our portable device or our import map. So we always want to be sure that we hit close. And there we go. We can see those scans in my list view here in my zone A. I'm going to go ahead and one more time hit that add count, pop over here to import map. And for the import map, it really is as simple as selecting the right map, because we can have multiple, and selecting the file. So I'm going to go ahead, excuse me, aim's a little off. So we're just going to navigate to the file that we're looking for. And once we go ahead and select it, I can just hit import, and it's going to go ahead and read that import map. If there are any issues, it will go ahead and give you a little warning, and it will give you a pop-up letting you know that it couldn't upload anything, or we have bad scans. But getting the scans in there is very easy. Now for the portable device, this part is where it gets a little different depending on the portable device. But essentially, remember we set it up in workstation preferences. We make sure that it can communicate. If it's a smart scanner, then we've initialized our inventory, and our current inventory is within the scanner. When we bring it back to Retail Pro, we just click over to portable device. Right now, unfortunately, I don't have one connected, so I'm getting this error. But when we come over here, all right, we'll take this time to do a little bit of a review as well. So we are getting to our inventory. We start our inventory at the store level, create that inventory in the PI name, build our zones, and give our zones names. We can add counts to that zone. And here's where we can start to see that difference. So waiting for download. To start download, select start and send on the portable terminal. For, I believe it's the Janum scanners, Foundry Logic, you're going to do a hot sync button instead. So like I said, a few options, but essentially that's about it. Come on over to the portable terminal. We say that we're going to go ahead and send it from our device. And then over here on the PT itself, we can go ahead and hit that F2 to send data and F1 to start send. All right. And then from there, we can go ahead and get the scans there into our Retail Pro, into that zone. All right, and then this part, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. Well, that highlight maybe makes it harder to read, but when you're dealing with a PT scanner, you do want to make sure that we delete the zone before you start your next zone. We don't want to accidentally bring those scans back into Retail Pro and then have to go ahead and redo your secondary zone B all over again. Okay. And that actually brings us to the scanning errors. So, of course, as you guys can see here in big letters, please don't panic. It happens. It could even be that we accidentally scanned the shipping label instead of the vendor's UPC. It was just right above it. We even aimed at the vendor's UPC, and the scanner itself just happened to pick up the packing slip. No big deal. We're going to go ahead and we actually get a few more scans in here. There we go. Now I'm going to hit close, not cancel. All right. And so I can go ahead and back out of here. And so now I can see this is at my zone level, my zone A, B, and C. My zone A is the only one that actually has scans in it. Now I can go ahead and go over to errors. Errors are going to be where we can see any bad scans or bad counts. Usually you're only going to have a bad count if we have a bad scan. Because that, we have a bad scan, we scanned the wrong barcode, and we said there was 4 of them. So 4 bad counts, 1 bad scan. So we would go into our errors. Let's pull this up one more time. All right. From those errors, this is what it's going to look like. So it's going to show you the import number. So whatever we scanned will show up under import ID. And then it'll show you the good scan before and the good scan after the bad scan. So that way, again, we know that this was our aisle 1. We know that this was in aisle 1, and I can see that the flower plate, D 8.5 garden, whatever the rest of that says, was right before it, and my tufted vinyl storage bench was right after it. So if I go back to aisle number 1, I just need to go ahead and find the item right in between it that matches the number of scans that we had. And so now that I know what item it was, I can go ahead and come over here and hit this resolve. So whether we decide to go ahead and add this to go over right now, recount it and add it to my zone A, or I say I'm just going to go ahead and put this over here and I'm going to add all of my corrections to my corrections zone. Whatever the case, you do have to go ahead and resolve this error. Essentially just tell Retail Pro to forget about it. We're going to go ahead and give you the right scan later. All right. And once we resolve it and there's no more errors in that zone, we can move on to phase 3, merging our zones into our store and reviewing those discrepancies once we have all of our zones merged. So let's hop back over. Okay. So sorry, unfortunately, I can't show you these errors, but I'm going to go ahead and hop into zone B here. And I'm going to go over to my scanned, add counts. I want to add a few over here. Okay. Let's close, not cancel. And let's go ahead and back out. I want some more in zone C here. One more time, add counts. Keep going on that manual route. And you see, so this item does not exist in my physical inventory sheet. Now this item might exist in my inventory, but if I had filtered my physical inventory down, it just might not be part of my current physical inventory. So be aware of that. This is the pop-up you're going to get. Right now, I know that item actually does not exist because remember I took a complete physical, so there are no filters. I think I just added an extra 0. But this is what you're going to go ahead and get. So it is, again, impossible to get a bad scan when you're doing it manually because we have access to your entire physical inventory. And if you were working with a smart scanner, same exact thing. Impossible to get a bad scan in a Retail Pro because it'll tell you when you scan it that it's a bad one. There we go. And you'll notice I keep typing in the 000s. So when I started creating items before I set up my ALUs to start at the 100,000. So that's why I'm typing in the leading zeros. If you are thinking about upgrading to version 9, we do have the ability to just start at 100,000, so you would never have to type in the leading zeros. This is something that I didn't do right when I started, and I kind of didn't think about it as my test system. All right. Okay, so now I have a few scans everywhere. Now, I do want you to notice I have a discrepancy button here. Now, I leave this discrepancy button here for the purpose of our webinars here, but at the zone level, this is not where we're checking for discrepancies. Because unfortunately, sometimes our customers like to help us redecorate, and they'll take some items that are supposed to be in the fishing department, and they'll end up in my toys department somehow. And so I'm not sure if I have a discrepancy until we've completed the entire physical, until I've counted every item in my store. Then I can say, well, yeah, now I got some discrepancies. There's nothing left to count. So just be aware of that. Just because you can get the button on the screen doesn't necessarily mean that that is the best place for it to be. Because you see, I went into discrepancies, and for my zone A, they're all discrepancies, but my start quantity is 0 on all these items as well. All right. So what I really want to do is get all of these zones merged into my store. And then once I know that my zones are all merged in, and we've dealt with any errors, then I know that where my true discrepancies lie. And so in order to go ahead and merge, I'm going to say zone A is complete. We scanned everything, I uploaded everything, and I dealt with any discrepancies that I might have had. So now I can just go ahead and mark. I can select the one that's marked or mark all. I could also use the merge marked. It's a little bit faster than going through the marked, but if you're nervous about it or this is your first time, I usually always just do the mark selected to force a habit for me. Once we have some zones marked or a zone marked, I can merge zone. You are about to merge the zone into a physical inventory. Do you wish to continue? Yes, yes I do. And there you go. And we'll get that secondary check mark to signal to you that this zone has been merged. We also have that merge date there as well. And now I can absolutely unmerge this zone if I need to. In order to do that, I do need to have that button here. So let's go ahead and grab that from my menu designer. Okay, and there's that unmerge. So we've merged that in, but let's say our associate comes back and says, oh, I realized the end cap was also part of my zone and I didn't count that at all. So I owe you some zones. I would have to unmerge before I can add additional counts. And honestly, if they weren't quite sure where they stopped and where they didn't stop, what might be better is just to clear your counts and kind of start over again. So I'm going to unmerge that. And I can go ahead and one more time jump into scanned. Remember, we have that clear count right there for that exact situation where you're just not quite sure where you stopped and where you need to start. The best thing to do is just to recount the zone. And again, the zone is much smaller than your entire store. It's easy to go ahead and do that too. All right. But let's say that that one is okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I can also just click directly in and mark them. Let's say zone A and zone B are both good. We've dealt with those discrepancies, or we've dealt with those errors, excuse me. And we've decided we're ready to merge. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge zone. Yes. All right. And remember, we can always use that merge marked as well. I like the control. All right. So we have our two merged zones and our two zones that are still currently not merged. So I do want to go ahead and sit here and let's go ahead and merge that zone as well. All right. And actually do that in the wrong order. Let's mark that and just merge marked. There we go. All right, so our corrections here. Remember, our corrections is for all of those errors, anything that we just forgot to count. You forgot that you didn't even consider a storage room as part of your zone. That's fine. We'll just add it either as its own zone or just call it the corrections. For this particular webinar, like I said, I unfortunately don't have those errors, but we can go ahead and still move forward as is. So all of our zones A, B, and C are merged. So I'm going to go ahead and actually hop out back to the store level. So I'm going to hit that retail pro and get back to the store level. So you can see now that I have those zones merged, now you can see the number of good scans and total scans for that zone. And while I'm thinking about it, I just want to remind that you have access to the page manager within your PI tool. And so if there's other bits of data that you are used to seeing, or if, description 1 doesn't mean anything to you, but description 2 does, make sure that you can go ahead and get the fields that you actually need. This is also another important step. Well, it can be done at any time, but if you get it done in your setup and your prep, it will help you streamline the process. Okay, let's cancel that. All right, from here, I can go into my PI inventory. That's going to show me everything. If I jump into scanned on that, you can see all of the scans from the various zones. And we can even see the discrepancy quantity here. I'm going to go ahead and go back one more time. I'm going to go actually just hit discrepancies. So here at the store level, if I've scanned all of my zones, now I know exactly where my discrepancies are. And so we can go ahead and sort this in any order we want. Some people like to go ahead and set it by discrepancy quantities. Some people like to go ahead and print this out and take a look. All right, and we can have it sorted by department, the BHD PI items, all, whichever one you'd prefer, by vendor. Usually department's a little bit easier. That way we can double check at least our discrepancies. So go check these items, maybe especially the ones that have a very, very high discrepancy, or maybe the ones that are priced big ticket items. Let me go ahead and just hit OK here. Oh, and actually before I do that, one more time. So all of my BHD PI designs, those are, of course, big hairy dog designs that we've created. And if you don't have them, just reach out to us. We are more than happy to go ahead and send over those documents. And dropping in those documents is extremely fast. We can probably, even if you want a training, we'll just do it in the training really quick. Let me actually use this one, PI scan and discrepancy by department. And I'm just going to go ahead and preview. Actually, we'll do all listed records and preview this. There we go. So this breaks out my difference in extended cost, my discrepancy quantity, my difference in extended price. So a lot of people really like this particular design because it shows you what does that mean to me money-wise. A few of our other designs also have that same thing, or even if you like one of the Retail Pro out of the box reports and it doesn't have all of the information you want, we can help you and walk you through customizing it and kind of building your own PI documents. All right, close that. Okay, and so normally what we always say is that if you found an error or an issue in a zone, you want to unmark that zone so that way we can go ahead and make that correction. As a system administrator, it will allow me to here at the store level change that scan quantity, but then we get that secondary pop-up. So this is similar to version 8. If we have legacy users, again, you can go ahead and change the scan quantity at the store level. And then we have to go ahead and tell it that same adjusted quantity for that zone, because our store quantities and our zone quantities do have to match. And so here, there we go, adjusted quantity is, let's say 5, there we go. Okay, and there we go, we're good. And now we've made that adjustment without having to unmerge that zone. So really easy for quick mistakes. But again, if the zone itself is a bigger problem, or if we have a lot of issues in one zone in particular, then maybe we want to unmerge that zone and then take a closer look at the zone and all the scans within that zone. Maybe we might have doubled up or just missed a section entirely. All right, the other thing is that we also have, and I don't think I have that with me at the moment. Let me go ahead and see if it's actually, might be looking in the wrong section, I apologize. Yes, so my PI zone reports, accessible on my zone page, of course. And so we also have a few additional big hairy dog zone reports. I unfortunately am missing them on my system here, so I can go ahead and make sure that gets emailed out to people as well, because this webinar will end up on our website, but we will be emailing out everyone who attended a copy as well, or a link to one as well. All right. Okay, coming back over here. So one more time, we're going to go ahead and use this to kind of do a little bit of a review. So phase 3 was merging zones. In this manual, they just use the merge zone button. And again, we want to make sure that they're marked and then merged, and they will have that check mark in the merge section. We are only merging zones. Well, truly, we can only merge zones that don't have errors. So we're only merging zones that we've dealt with any scanning errors. From there, at the store level, we can review any discrepancies. in. This is that discrepancy list again, and you can sort it in any order that you want, so long as there's a little hard to see on that. Let's go ahead and come over here to discrepancies. So long as there is that little dimple in front of the column, you are able to sort by that column, and you can go ahead and click it once more to sort in the opposite order. Click it 3 times to remove that sort. All right. Again, the manual is going to go ahead and remind you that you may want to print this list. A lot of people do. We also have reports within the Retail Pro Reports viewer, that separate executable, that can look at your latest PI as well. All right. And now we have a little bit of a difference for multi-store environments. All right, so one extra step, since the physical cannot technically be updated at the remote, it has to be prepared and then quick pulled to the main before it can update. So it's just a really quick but very important difference between a single store and a multi-store PI. We will prepare a multi-store PI update at the remote, and we will quick pull to the main so that it can be updated. So we are still going to go ahead and follow every other procedure of getting our scans into the zones and fixing any errors, and then looking at our discrepancies. All right. And then, of course, making sure that we process in at the main. And next is updating our PI. All right. And so to update the PI, I'm going to go ahead and pop up over here for a moment. I'm actually going to go ahead and come over and jump back into my zones. I know I don't have anything in my corrections, but I do get an additional pop-up that lets me know I have unmerged zones if I don't. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete this. All right, so all of our zones are merged. We've dealt with any errors. I've looked at my discrepancies. We've dealt with the ones that we can, and I'm accepting the other ones. Now it's time to adjust my inventory. Oh, actually, quick aside, because I almost always forget to go ahead and mention this. You can jump out of the physical inventory tool completely, and you can find the items that are giving you the most trouble, and you can check the history for those items. It will drop you into sales history by default, but you can go into all history or adjustment history, and this is a very powerful tool for helping retailers find out what exactly happened to that item. We're short 12 of them, 12 come in a pack. Did I not receive one? Let's take a look at the history behind it. Or maybe we're over one, you come in and you realize that we adjusted one out the other day, but we didn't have a reason. That could have been, unfortunately, a sysadmin who does not have any security restrictions accidentally just typing over in our inventory, and they just didn't notice. So very powerful tool. Remember, you have access to that history tool. If you don't see it on the screen, again, that is something that you can go ahead and add to the screen. You can always hop into form view as well. In form view, they usually have that history button there, a little less busy. All right, one moment, we have a quick question. So if we have some inventory stored at a warehouse where the main is located, should we inventory those items first, allowing polling, and then inventory the store, or vice versa? And so that would depend. So that inventory that you have at the store, if it is allocated or assigned, if it's inventory that is for a remote store, what you can do is, give them the scan quantities. If it's not assigned, if it's just a warehouse, and you're using it separately just to transfer in and out of, we can actually do a physical inventory for that warehouse. One moment here, let me see, actually. So Victoria, do you happen to have, let me see, do you have a mic? Can I go ahead and unmute you? All right. Oh, I'm so sorry, Victoria. It seems like it's not letting me unmute you. That might be like a security permission on your end, but it seems like I can't unmute you on this side. So I apologize. We're going to have to go ahead and type this out a little bit. Or actually, would it be possible for me to go ahead and shoot you a quick email? I'd like to go ahead and talk about this a little bit more. It sounds like, okay, perfect. Let me just get your name down. And Victoria, can I go ahead and ask what store you're affiliated with? Perfect, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna shoot you a quick email so we can talk a little bit more about your specific setup. But it's a great question. Yes, if we're using the store or the warehouse as essentially another site, we would be able to go ahead and run that physical for that warehouse at the main. If it's housing inventory for other stores, I might say we take stock of what that is and we go ahead and send that information over to the remote stores. That way they can go ahead and even import it in via an import map. There's a few options. We definitely have options of how we can handle it depending on the specific situation. All right, let me go ahead and hop out for just a moment. Come back into inventory. Physical inventory. See, now that we have an active one, I have my zones and my stores. Hop back into stores. So at this point, we have, again, looked at all of our zones and added them, and we've looked at our discrepancies and checked out history, and I couldn't find, any changes where I can make in those discrepancies, so I'm going to accept them. And so now I can, at the store level, update my PI. I will have to go ahead and select my store. And an important distinction here is under options. Are we updating all inventory or are we updating quantities only? And so the distinction here is that quantities only is going to only update the items that we actually have scanned quantities for. Now, if you're doing a complete PI, that might not be what you want. I know people get a little bit concerned about doing all inventory, but if you have negative items, -2, -3, you can't count that. And so if there's not a physical count for that negative, it's not going to get caught. It's not going to get corrected if we use quantity only. If we do all inventory and we have a negative item, that inventory will then get adjusted to 0. Oh yes, absolutely. We have another question to review uploading the counts from a CSV or an Excel file. And yes, absolutely, that will be done by zones. So really quick, I'm going to cancel out of here. I'm going to hop into my zones. And I'm actually going to build that new zone. So here we go. We have that zone. Just to kind of tie our questions together, let's going to go ahead and just say HW or WH at the warehouse, create. So let's just say scanned. In this scenario, maybe at that warehouse, we have a few items that are allocated to my Milton store, and they sent me a CSV file that had those scans and those counts. So I can add counts, import. I'm going to, using that little folder looking icon, open up my, I'm going to get into my Windows files, and I just have to navigate to the file. So let me see, I believe I do have some kind of test import available to me. Go ahead and do all files. Okay. So I flip that down to all files, and here is, this might not be the proper formatting, but I can at least show you guys the errors that I would get. So we want to go ahead and navigate to the Excel or CSV file. I usually have more success with CSV files. Okay, and then we would hit import. So now it's uploading our scans, and you see that was a PO import, so not at all what I needed for this PI. So it let me know right then and there are 26 items that couldn't be found. Okay. And really, I might not have anything here, but I can go ahead and hit close again, not cancel. And anything that it could find would be listed here as a scan. And of course, if there were any bad scans or errors, they would also come through, and it would just let you know that it's a bad scan. The important part with that CSV file is building it appropriately and then making the import map. So a CSV file can, of course, just start within an Excel file. And essentially all it is one column is going to be the file, or 2, 4, yep. So one reason why it works better is a CSV. This is automatically trying to strip all of those leading zeros, which is what I don't want. If I typed in 98 into my system, it would say that doesn't exist, but 0000098, that exists. A little way to kind of get around that is we can hit custom, and I can go ahead and come on down. And actually, let me go ahead and do another custom. Make sure that's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So custom, and then just making sure that there's 6 digits there. It will make sure that it fills the leading zeros, and it will leave them there. So I'm going to just hit OK, and there they go. And that was kind of quick, but if you ever have any Excel questions at all, we can help with that as well. Oh, and yes, the import map. So building the import map is the other side of that. So of course, the CSV file is important. That's just the numbers and the counts. 6. That's just about it. That's what your CSV file is going to look like. But let me cancel out of here for a moment. And remember that we can always put a pause on our PI inventory. So I'm going to just kind of back out all the way, jump into options, system preferences. And one more time, we're going to go into merchandise, PI tool, and import map. So merchandise, PI tool, import map. I'm going to hit new. We can call it our PI import. We're going to say we begin at 7, end at 6. I'm going to use my ALU for this example, and all my ALUs are up to 6 digits. So let's go ahead and there we go. That's actually 5 because we count the 0 as a negative, or excuse me, as a space. And then length for the next one, we do 3. All right, this one's going to be begin at 6 actually, and end at 8. There we go. And so as you can see, these columns are kind of tied together. So as I was making corrections or editing my links, it will try to go ahead and correct it for me and change those numbers. So usually helpful, sometimes can be a little bit of a hindrance. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that. All right, got a few more questions. Perfect. Always love it when we have some questions. So let me go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll go ahead and get to Leslie's question next, okay? Just a moment here, Leslie. All right, but that's pretty much as easy as it is to set up this import map. I let it know the length of my count, of my actual identifying length of my count, and then at the very end, I make sure I let it know that's an ALU. I'm looking at ALUs for this PI. I can hit save. And all too importantly, don't forget to hit update before you leave system preferences. Now, inventory. Jump into physical inventory. Actually, I'm going to just hop directly into zones, because that's where I got to be. And let me see, that one's not merged, so we're going to use our warehouse. Excuse me. Add counts, import. Remember, we're going to find the CSV file or Excel file, and we're going to highlight the correct import map. So for me, that one's going to be PI now, and I just have to make sure the file that I import is first column, 6 characters worth of an ALU. Second column is going to be the count. All right. Now we also had a question on making a backup and how to go ahead and make a correction. All right. So the corrections are going to come in when we have our, if I'm understanding the question correctly, when we have our discrepancies. So one more time, I'm going to jump into physical inventory, stores, because at that level, that's where our discrepancies are going to be. All of our zones have been merged, and I know that I don't have any more items in my store to count. So any discrepancies are going to be accurate. Discrepancies here. As sysadmin, I have the ability to directly edit my scan quantity. And as sysadmin, if you don't have this ability, you want to check your permissions. But as sysadmin, I can just say, actually, I have 2. From there, it's going to pull out every zone that we scan this item in. And it's going to say, okay, well, if you're telling me I have 2, where did it come from? Did it come from zone C? Did it come from a different zone? In this case, I can just say, especially because it was just one zone, I can just say zone C. It's a little bit trickier if it came from multiple zones, which is why sometimes instead of correcting it from here, actually, sorry, it'll want me to do that. They have to match. Like I said, they have to match. We also can just unmerge the zone. So if I know that my problem with this here, -3, or let me find something that actually has scan quantity. Here we go. So my system thought I had 0. I found 1. If I wanted to go ahead and edit this or review this or print this, essentially, I can go ahead and just unmerge whatever zone this guy was in. It's really quick. Just because it's quick, I'm going to go ahead and see zone C. Okay. Just a quantity 1. All right, so that one was zone C. I'm going to go ahead and pop out PI zone C. I can unmerge this guy here. I can go into my scans, and I could, if I wanted to, if I had multiple issues with zone C, I might just say, I need to clear these counts and restart. Alternatively, I'm going to go ahead, I have to merge this back now. We could also just print out all of our discrepancies and have people double check. You know, unfortunately, if our first count was completely accurate, then we might have to do a little bit more digging to see what's going on with these items. But ultimately, those are the next steps that I would take in regards to corrections. You know, we got to check out the zone, of course, recount, make sure that we didn't miss anything, and then check out the item's history, and let's see if we can figure out something within Retail Pro that might have been the problem. Okay. And let's see. Oh, sorry, Leslie, I think I might have accidentally put your hand down, but did we have another question from you? And so freeze your inventory. And so are you referring to, you might be referring to that PI snapshot, and that happens at the start of your PI. When we go ahead and create our PI, it creates that snapshot of our inventory, and it is essentially that freeze in time, which is why it becomes a little difficult if we are open and selling product. We have to make sure that we count that product before it leaves the store, because Retail Pro did take that snapshot. And of course, like I said, with a multi-store environment, you're going to want to make sure you quick poll. And I would just suggest, if we can, to have the store closed. All right. Really quick, I'm going to show you guys how to update the PI And then any additional questions that you guys have, or even if you guys want to stick around a little bit and you have specific questions, we can absolutely tackle those. Really quick, I'm going to go ahead and say, so we've talked about our discrepancies. We've dealt with them where we want to. Perhaps we did find out that zone C needed to be recounted, so we unmerged, cleared, and we re-entered all of those scans, and we re-merged it. That's the important step. We got to re-merge it. From there, I'm going to go ahead and say, update this PI. Remember, we have to select our store. And we were talking about the differences between all inventory and quantities only. This is my complete physical. I do want to capture all of those negative items as well and get them back to zero. So I'm going to say all inventory. Update. Oh, see that little pop-up? It contains unmerged zones. So let me go ahead and see. I must not have actually merged in. I didn't merge in my warehouse zone here. And actually, I got some errors there. They came up from that import that was a PO import. They came up as a completely blank. So let's go ahead and come on down. Need my resolve button. Thank you guys. You guys showed me how to get those errors in here somehow without having a scanner. So let's just go ahead and hit resolve. Yes. And that's it. Like I said, unfortunately, we can't really do much for correcting those bad scans at this moment. Essentially, resolve just removes them from the zone, and we have to go and get them in those corrected zones, or get them in, by adding the count. But there we go, and I actually don't have any scans in here, so I'm good to just delete that if I wanted to. So now we're going to go ahead and one more time update PI. And there we go. And that was about it. That one was really, really quick. We didn't get the error. We just hit OK, and it creates that adjustment memo. Remember, at the end of the day, your PI tool is essentially a fancy way of creating a giant adjustment memo. The things that you don't get on an adjustment memo, of course, are going to be like your discrepancy quantities and like your zone reports and all of that. All right, 1 second. Oh, and so when you're doing a cycle count, so if you, oh, actually, I'm so sorry. Mindy, give me one moment. I had a question right before that. So Leslie, how do I poll before inventory? So really quick, let's pop up over here. And so that was a little higher up. Apologize. Okay. See if I can find the little button that says quick poll. Oh, my quick poll button is in here. Oh, there we go. All right. So unfortunately, it just says ECM should be completed. But essentially what we want to do is we want to quick poll with the main. So run a process out at the main and a process in at the store. So we get all of those updates from the main, and we get a chance to send the main our receipts. And so I actually have a little video about ECM as well on our training website. And so Leslie, if it's okay with you, I can probably go ahead and send that over to you in an email. So that way you can go ahead and see how to go ahead and run a quick poll whenever you'd like. The other thing that I realized that I promised you and I didn't go ahead and get back to you, so 1 second here, is backing up. And this is going to be beneficial really for everybody. Okay, awesome, Leslie. I'll go ahead and send you that video. But backing up. Absolutely, if you're not sure where your backups are or what's going on with your backups, always good to check. You can run your own backup from the main home screen, going into Tool and Technicians Toolkit. Now, you will need access to Technicians Toolkit. It's security permission. As sysadmin, though, I can go wherever I want. So we got that sysadmin. Come back over here to backup and recovery, backup. And really, we want to come down to options first. Options is where we do the setup. Backup is where we just hit start. But you guys want to run a complete backup, and we got to make sure that this is selected. Automatically start the database after the backup is complete. Yes, absolutely, that has to be checked. If that gets unchecked, the database will not start by itself, and we will have to run Tech Toolkit to run it. But essentially, that just means you won't be able to get into Retail Pro. All right, location. I would say, this is just where the backup is going to be. I might say just put it somewhere on your desktop. This is the kind of thing that we're either going to use it today or we're not going to use it at all. But your normal backups should be on your R drive. In my setup, they're actually on the C drive, but in a folder called DB backups, database backups. Usually on the R drive for most people, Retail Pro R drive, we try to keep that straight. But for some, it might be on the C drive. So you might have to go and take a look if you're not quite sure. I'm going to go ahead and just say, yep, throw that in my DB backups, a complete backup, and yes, automatically start the database. I'm going to save that. And there we go. Now, it does give you the option to compress the backup, so zip up the file to make it a little smaller. Do not do that from within Retail Pro. It takes a lot longer, and you can zip it up outside of the backup process, and you can get your database up and running. We don't want you down for that long if you don't have to be. And now over here on backup, all you got to do is hit start, and that's going to do it. And that's how you go ahead and run a backup. And you can actually also use that to check where your current backups are going. So we can go ahead and go into options and just see where's that location set to. All right. And so Mindy, let's go ahead and get back to your question. Do you still use update all inventory when doing a cycle count 2? Great question. And ultimately, that does depend on whether or not you're filtering at the start. If you did not filter at the start, that means you are looking at your entire inventory. And if you are doing a cycle count, then you only want to update your quantities. But one more time, I'm going to go ahead and show you that. If you did get a chance to filter at the start, then our scanned or our PI inventory is only those items. So yes, we can leave it at all inventory, and that's how we capture those negative quantities. So let me go ahead and go stores here. All right, name, this is going to go ahead and be just store 1. Let me actually use my Lafayette store. I'm not sure if I really have too much more. But here we go. Now I want to say that I'm only going to look at DCS code. Oh, I got some interesting ones here. Let's go ahead and just do these 2. All right. I got my art, color, paint, and my cat food. Go ahead and hit OK and OK. All right, now here, I'm going to go into PI inventory. All right, I must not have had any items in my cat food section there. But you can see I have just the one item in my art, color, paint. Like I said, this is definitely a sandbox, not a real system. But that's my entire PI inventory right now. So if I were to update all quantities, it would only update this single item. If I update all inventory, excuse me. If I update all inventory, it would only update this item because this is the only item that's part of my PI right now. So that's the distinction. And like I said, if I didn't filter at the start, we go ahead and cancel this out. I'm going to inactivate this. I'm going to hit new one more time. Let's go ahead and do training. Milton will be great. There we go. I'm going to clear this, clear all, make sure I have nothing. Okay. So clear all, letting the filter run open. That's the same as running a complete physical. But then ultimately, if I decided that I'm only going to scan, my women's apparel jacket department, if I did update all inventory, it would update everything else and set them all to 0. All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Mindy. And so, oh, also, Tim, I got your note. Yes, I will go ahead and also add you to that quick poll email. All right. And Leslie and Tim, can I go ahead and get both of your stores? That way I can just make sure I get this to the right people. Okay, and as soon as I go ahead and get that, should be pretty much set. Perfect, thank you both. I'll go ahead and get that sent over to you. And then, Anne, can I share the manual and notes for this PI? Absolutely. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and be emailing everybody who attended this webinar directly, and I'm going to make sure that we attach the manual that I used. So this would be the PT manual. If you don't need the PT manual, feel free to just let me know that you don't want that or you don't want to be part of that, and I can go ahead and delete it. But it is good. It sends you, it shows you through the basics, and then it gets to specifically that PT, and it gets a little bit less useful for your average everyday person. But the basics are still there. It's great to go ahead and keep as a reminder. And the other thing, I'm going to go ahead and just add a few of our BHD PI reports just to make sure that you have them. And if you don't, if you want a training, we can load it up, or we can even go ahead and kind of walk you through where to drop them, so that way you can print them directly from within your Retail Pro. All right. And I'm going to also take your email as a just in case. Okay. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me. Like I said, unfortunately, I'm working from home today, so I had to kind of write some stuff down before I can go ahead and get this all over to you. But let's go ahead and answer this next question that came in. So what report would you run for the auditors? All right. And so there's a few different reports that we have. So of course, within the PI tool itself, you have the option of printing all of your discrepancies and printing different versions of your discrepancies. The other thing, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this for a moment. Just excuse the messy background here, or the messy desktop, I guess. And I'm going to launch my Retail Pro 9 reports. All right. Reports. Okay. So we have a few different reports here that are PI specific reports. So we can go ahead and see all of our PI ranked by items, vendors. We have a lot of options for you, because we know, everyone wants something just a little bit different. But we can go ahead and see all of those PIs. So we can also go ahead and see, we come on down, merchandise. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I'm in the wrong spot. So unfortunately, the actual audit group of reports are going to be more like those security audits and security permissions. I did have my PI zone report. Oh, there it is. We also have a PI zone report that's very, very helpful. The discrepancy is going to also be able to, if we print it directly from Retail Pro, is also going to give you the like I said, extended cost and extended price quantity differences. You could even print the PI from the adjustment memo screen, which will show you the quantity discrepancies and what that means in dollars overall. So unfortunately, I'm so sorry, but we have lots of options, and it kind of depends on what exactly they're asking for. If they just kind of need what your on hand was before the PI, what it was after, and then a discrepancy report, usually that's handled by the on hand report. You can run that before you run your PI, run it again after the PI, and then just hand them over that discrepancy report as well. So that's usually what most people need. If your needs are a little bit different, of course, we can go ahead and build you any report that you need. Let me go ahead and pop on over to the questions. I thought we had one more. I think that's about it. Okay, actually, I don't think we had another question. If you don't have these PI reports, send us a quick email, or of course, actually, let me go ahead and pop that over here really quick. Okay, .com, of course. That is my email, lizm@bighairdog. If you're taking a look at your reports and you don't have any of my PI reports, you don't have even my aging reports, these are beautiful reports. Jeff spent a lot of time in making them, and they're relatively new. So if you don't have those reports, please go ahead and give us a call. We'd be happy to go ahead and update your reports and drop those in. It shouldn't take too long at all, and usually we can get connected and let you go and just kind of make sure that everything is running. But there's been recently updates to our current core reports. So if you don't have, or if you haven't checked in with us in regards to reports in the last 6 months, check in. We might have some cool reports for you. We have a relatively new restock report as well. Great for the holidays. You can see what sold this morning and see what needs to go ahead and be restocked. All right. But with that, I know I keep jumping around, so I appreciate those who have stuck with me so far. But that's about it for the webinar. We've updated our PI using the PI tool. Actually, really quick, before I go ahead and let you guys go completely, go ahead and hop back out. And I'm going to go ahead and go into merchandise adjustments. And this is actually the adjustment memo that was created for that particular physical. So I can go ahead and jump that into form view. And like I said, this is even something that I can go ahead and print. So this is that entire physical. This is the old prices and the old adjusted prices. So you can see this breakout of what that really means to me cost-wise and quantity-wise. I can print this whole adjustment memo using my BHD memo. Again, if you don't have that document, just let us know. We'll get that to you. Preview. And it's kind of a lot, but there we go. We can go ahead and one more time see that old store quantity. These are all those negatives that I didn't count, and that adjustment. And again, that breakout of what that means to us cost and price wise. And for those multi-store environments, we also have it for the company. Save that? Nope. All right. And, it's not technically part of the PI, but remember that your adjustment memos can also be used to kind of do those spot checks and cycle counts. We could even ask somebody in our inventory. I could filter to a specific department, use the print button, and print out a count sheet. BHD also, or Big Hairy Dog also has barcode count sheets. That makes things a lot easier, so we can scan those barcodes. But those count sheets will allow us to go ahead and print all of that department. I can send people off, and I can actually create my own adjustment memo and kind of avoid the PI tool altogether. Again, this is a PI webinar, but there are ways to get around it if we just need something smaller to handle our job. Okay, like I said, with that, I've kept you guys for long enough. I'll let you go. If anybody wants to stick around and ask any additional questions, please feel free. Again, my name is Liz with Big Hairy Dog. This has been our PI for V9. And my email is lizm@bighairydog.com if you have any further questions. There's a few of you I'm going to go ahead and be reaching out to already. Thanks so much. All right, so I think we have a hand raised. Leslie, I'm going to try to unmute your mic here if you have one. Okay, so Leslie, if you are self-muted, you can feel free to unmute. You've been unmuted on this side. Unless you don't want to ask the question out loud, then feel free to just type it out. Oh, I see. Okay. Don't have a mic, no problem. So not able to get into Tech Toolkit for the backup. Okay, so that one is pretty standard. So then that's going to be a permissions thing. So we want to make sure that your user or you have access to a user that has the permissions to get into Tech Toolkit. So under Employee Management, Groups, you can always take a look at what group you're assigned to. Again, if you can't get into here, then we might need to go ahead and ask somebody who set up the permissions to go ahead and take a look at what's going on. We essentially want to make sure that you're part of a group that has access to this area. So under Permissions, Tech Toolkit. And so you see access backups. We essentially just want to make sure you can kind of do whatever you need. So access, we want to give you those permissions. You might not need permission or access to everything, but we just need to make sure you can get up and do a backup. Or like I said, if you have your sysadmin account, sysadmin does not listen to any security permissions at all. Oh, actually. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just realized that my screen was paused for a moment. So let me back up one more time. So we're going to go into Employee Management, Groups. From there, highlighted on the group. So if you're part of our, let's say you're part of our back office users, I'm going to go into Form View, Permissions. I just want to make sure that my back office users have access to Tech Toolkit. And it looks like in my setup, they don't. So I would want to either give the group access, or I can even go ahead and say New, and this is Tech Toolkit, permissions, and then I'm just going to go ahead and say check all permissions. Let me actually just highlight the Tech Toolkit, check all permissions. And that's just a quick way of doing it. Of course, if you wanted to go ahead and go in there and say, yes, you can do a backup, but no central tenders, you can go ahead and go through it and make it a little bit more specific. But we can go ahead and save that, and then just make sure we add you to that group. So we'd go ahead and just pop you on over. From there, you gain access to anything that this group has, as well as any other members that you're part, or any other groups that you're part of. All right. And like I said, that's just permissions for Tech Toolkit. Of course, if you have sysadmin, if you're not sure whether an account is an administrator account, because you can have multiple administrator accounts, you can hop into Employees, and you can actually see whether or not they are sysadmin accounts. So this was my everyday account that I use to test permissions, and this is the account that I use as sysadmin. If I wanted to, I could make my Liz employee here a system administrator just by saving that. And there we go. And now no matter what login I use, sysadmin or Liz, I'll be able to go ahead and access all aspects of Retail Pro. I just won't have the security safety nets to stop me from doing something maybe a little silly. All right. So again, I'm going to hang out for a little bit longer. If anybody has any more questions other than that, you guys are free to head out. And Leslie, did you have another question? I saw that hand go up. Again, the Oracle SID was not found for Tech Toolkit. Is that when you're trying to enter Tech Toolkit, it gives you that error? Brian, yes, I'll get your email and I'll make sure that we send it to the proper email. Thank you so much for letting us know. Okay. All right, with that, Leslie, I do want to go ahead and if you have time today, I'm not sure if you do, but if you have time today, I would want to get you on the board. We want to make sure that you have access to, run those backups if you need it. The backups can only be run on the server. I'm not sure if there's something going on if you're on a workstation, but we would want to go ahead and get dialed in to kind of see what's going on with that, because even on a regular workstation, you should be at least able to access Tech Toolkit unless you don't have the permissions to. And so if that's all right with you, if you wouldn't mind just shooting me a quick email with like a good callback number, then I can get you on the board right now. If today doesn't quite work out, perfect. You just let me know in the email and we can get you on the board for first thing tomorrow morning as well. All right, so we have a few attendees left. We have about 5 people left. Please feel free. Most everyone's gone if you're shy, but let us know what's going on. We can go ahead and answer any questions. Like I said, I'm going to hang out for a little bit longer here as well. And thanks to you too, Brian, for joining us. Thank you to everybody actually for joining us here today. This has probably been one of the livelier webinars I've done in quite some time. Definitely feels it feels good to be able to go ahead and actually talk to some people instead of talking at a blank screen for a little while. So I appreciate everyone's involvement on this webinar today. Okay, thanks again, everybody. I think I see everyone trickling out, so I'm going to go ahead and end this webinar in about a minute here. Still got some time to ask any last minute questions, so thank you. All right, thanks again, everybody, for joining. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. We'll be sending out a copy of this to everybody who was registered. So if you missed it or you kind of jumped in last minute, we'll be able to go ahead and catch you up on everything you missed. All right, thanks so much. Have a great one. Bye.